What are we discussing on today's podcast, you ask? Well, we got Nash Walker of the Reno Aces, broadcaster, on the podcast today. Talk about his background, his career, and tell us which D-backs prospects should we be excited about, who might get called up soon, and who we should keep our eye on for the rest of the season, all on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I'm Miller Thomas, multimedia journalist and graphic designer, so please go check out my website, MillerThomas24.myportfolio.com. And there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks about Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube, so please hit subscribe on the Locked on Diamondbacks YouTube channel. But without further ado, to talk about the Reno Aces, which prospects we need to look out for, let's talk to broadcaster for the Aces, Nash Walker. Nash, how are you today, sir?
Millard, I'm doing great. Crush the intro. Mine was
Thanks.
never that long. Yours is so great. Mine was just, thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen. Then we dive into it. But yours is great. Yes, follow Millard. I'm doing well. It's good to see you finally. This is our first crossover ever, which is crazy after all the years. But I guess because now we have a balanced schedule. So the Twins will play the D-backs this year. We would have done it, but they had never played the D-backs, at least since I hosted, so we never crossed over. But I'm so glad we are now in a different context.
Yeah, for the listeners that are confused, Nash used to be the Locked on Twins host. I don't know if we said that yet, so they're like, what is he talking about right now? Yeah, Nash used to be the Locked on Twins host. How long did you do that for?
Yeah, I did that 2019 all the way up until my last day was the end of February this year. So I did that 800, I think it was 850 episodes. Really long. Yeah, every single day. Twins, they had a losing record with me as host, and they were 0-2 in the playoffs, but I loved every second of it. And you know that too. Like, no matter what, we love doing it, and I love doing it even though the Twins didn't have much success when I was hosting.
Yeah, it's definitely a grind sometimes when your team isn't playing well and you go through the lull of the season, especially when you get to like the summer months and you're like, man, we still got another couple months of baseball here and our team is nowhere near it in the playoff
For
race.
sure.
That's when it's kind of tough to talk about, content and standings. But with the D-backs playing well right now, it's very easy and very motivating to get on the mic every day and be like, man, I want to talk some D-backs baseball. I want to get into it. But for this podcast, we're going to dive into a whole bunch of areas. We're going to talk about prospects. But before we get there, Nash, we need to talk a little bit about you and get to know Nash Walker, the broadcaster for the Reno Aces. And the first question I always like to ask people who like to do this line of work and is, in sports is just why? Why did you choose baseball? Why are you working in sports? Why are you becoming a broadcaster and doing all the things they do? What's your motivation behind that?
I've always loved baseball. I know it's such a cliche answer.
Yeah.
I love baseball. Of course. I love baseball. I love baseball because I love the day-to-day, that it's every single day, because I think that's how I kind of view life in a certain way. Like, you're going to have bad days. There's going to be days where you're not feeling great, but you're going to go play. You're going to go play the next morning. Like the Aces today, we had a game at 11:05, and last night they played at 6:35. So we had such a quick turnaround, and you can't even catch your breath. Like, we're playing the next day. I love that about baseball. I love that in baseball, like in Major League Baseball and just baseball in general, the best team is usually going to come out on top at the end of a regular season. I love that it's a long season. I love that it's a large sample. And again, I love that it's every day. I love that it's every day. Love being at the park. And I fell in love with it when I was young. And then I think I just found a niche in it. I found when I was creating content and doing Locked On Twins and like following the Twins, I just found like a passion in doing content for it as well. And then I've always wanted to do broadcasting, and this came up. And now I'm with Kevin DiDomenico, who's the voice of the Aces, and we're in the booth together every day. And it's like, it's just so cool that it's come to this point. But yeah, I've always loved baseball. I've just gotten super lucky, like to have Locked On and now to be in Reno. It's blessed me in so many ways.
Yeah, and to be in the line of industry and sports, like you got to have a passion for what you do, right? It's a grind, and especially in baseball, like you talk about, you're doing it basically every day. You're working, you're covering a game, you're doing some kind of behind the scenes, you're doing something for baseball every single day once you're in season, and it gets, it's a real grind, and it gets pretty long at times. But at the end of the day, you're covering sports, you're just watching baseball, talking about baseball. It's like pretty gratifying that we get to do this at the end of the day. So I would try not to complain, because it's always like I love what I do too.
You're gonna have days like we're gonna have days where you're not feeling it, and that's fine too. Like you're not gonna love it every day, but most days we do. That's the
big. No one wants to hear the guy complain about, man, you had to watch a baseball game last night and then talk about it. Man, you got a tough life. So no one wants to hear those complaints. But how do you think the transition has been from going to the booth? Because I'm sure you probably had some broadcasting experience before doing the podcasting stuff, but what has that transition been like, talking, for 30 minutes, 5 days a week, to now covering a game for, I don't know how long, a Reno Aces game? I'm assuming it's at least 2.5 hours, like
PCL, PCL, Miller, PCL. Yeah, you know what it actually helps you with is like the pregame show, like the intro, and then the outro, like the postgame show. And then I think what doing the podcast helps you with, like if you were to call a game tomorrow, I think you would even notice like, this helps me fill space, because that's what we do. We're space fillers on a podcast. When you're talking, you're finding things to say, you're searching your brain. It's quick. That's the tool that you're building, is you're quick. What can I find right here, right now, and say it right in this moment? And that's what we do. And that's what you do every day. That's what I did every day. So when I'm in the booth and I need something quick, I think that muscle in my brain was built so much through Locked On, doing it every day. Because you probably sit there sometimes, you're like, ooh, I don't want to say the same thing over again. I need to think of something new. I need to think of another way to present this. I need to use a different word. And that's the same in broadcasting as well. Whether I'm like doing play-by-play or I'm color for Kevin, I'm always looking for things. And I think that skill was refined completely doing Locked On every day. It's just so repetitive, and that muscle strengthens over time.
Yeah, because doing the podcast every day, I found like when I first started the podcast, I felt like I did probably too much freestyling, where I would just come on and then it's like I didn't really do a lot of prep, and then I'm just trying to talk and like fill space for 6 minutes. But once you get a little prep behind you, once you get the reps behind you and that experience, it's like, okay, I could go in any different direction I want. I could hit multiple angles, and sometimes you don't even need the prep. Sometimes you're just like, I have everything I want lined up in my head after doing it. Like you said, you're at 850 plus episodes. I think you still got like 100 plus episodes on me, so I'm still climbing to reach my.
You'll get there.
Yeah, it's a lot for sure, and we'll definitely get there probably one day. But ultimately, like, where do you want to end up? Is being a podcaster, broadcaster, like, what ultimately do you want to do with your career? Could you see yourself full time as a play-by-play guy? Could you see yourself maybe starting a second podcast company? Maybe you say, screw Locked On, I'm trying to start my own rival podcast.
It would never be Screw Locked On. It would never be Screw Locked On. So right now I'm the number 2. So I do color for the first 3 innings. I do play-by-play for 4 through 6. And then I do color 7 through 9 for home games for the Aces. And I love that. I love working with Kevin. I love the Aces. I love working there. I think my dream has been for a while now to work for the Twins and do play-by-play for the Twins. Like that's my ultimate dream. If everything else fell into place, everything went right, that's what I would be doing, either on the radio or TV one day. But I don't want to put myself in a box either. This role is changing. It's a multimedia role, and you've seen that too. You got to be able to do a lot of different things, and content creation is something I did with Locked On, and it's something I'm doing now, and it's something I did in college, and I'll continue to do that because you have to have that skill. I also think like a pregame, postgame show, a host of that, I could see myself doing. So I'm not constrained to doing play-by-play. I love doing play-by-play, but I just love being on air. I love to record, and I love to talk, and I love to chop it up about baseball. And I always used to say, I don't know if you feel this way about Locked On, the best part is like people interacting with you and people just talking Twins. It's like you're having a conversation. It's a D-backs conversation. We're just talking D-backs. And when I listen to you, I feel like I'm having a conversation just about the team. That's what I want to do. And whether that's broadcasting on a pregame show, podcast, whatever it is, that's what I'm looking to do. I think that's ultimately my goal in whatever form that it comes in.
Yeah, and that's why I like doing the podcast. I love doing these crossovers and just talking to people and picking their brain because everyone views sports differently. Like we might
Yeah.
have consensus of like who the best players in the sport are, but like if you ask 100 people to give you a different take, everyone's gonna have a different take. And some people might think a certain someone has a hot take or something like that, but everyone just views sports through their own prism and views it differently. So it's like no one actually has a hot take when it comes to sports. Maybe there's a consensus, a majority that feels one way when it comes to opinion, but that's why I love doing this stuff, picking people's brains and seeing how different people view things through their prisms and through their own experiences in life. So I do love that about podcasting. But Nash, we're going to talk a little bit about prospects here pretty soon. And Nash is going to help us talk about which prospects we need to keep our eye on for the 2023 season. But if you need help canceling your subscription, you need to head to Rocket Money, because did Rocket Money alert you to change in your spending or subscriptions that saved you money? Because Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about, and chances are you're one of them. Like that Stars app to just watch that one show, or that free gaming trial you never actually use. Rocket Money will quickly and easily find your subscriptions for you. And for any you don't want to pay for anymore, you just hit cancel and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. It's that easy. Rocket Money also helps you manage all your finances in one place and automatically categorize your expenses so you can quickly track your budget in real time and also get alerted if anything looks off. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. Got to say it 3 times. And also, we got another sponsor, but for this one, I got to pull up the MLB overlay because we also got Game Time to discuss, because buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the place for last minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, now that we got the ads out the way, let's get back into the podcast. Here we're at Reno Aces broadcaster Nash Walker and former Locked On Twins host. Do you still check on the Locked On Twins? Do you still?
Oh yeah, It becomes your baby. It becomes your baby.
Yeah.
Like that show was my baby. I'm always gonna keep tabs. Like I'm always keeping up with it, seeing what's going on. And Brandon Warren is he's hosting Locked On Twins now. We did postcast together last year. He's the full-time host now. So yes, I'm keeping tabs for sure.
I don't know what I would do if I left Locked On D-backs. I feel like I would need like a little bit of break. I feel like I would need to step away for a couple months to be like, okay, I'm just gonna let him rock or she rock and just let them do it for a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe not even tune in just to see, just to get a little bit of a reprieve from it. But let's get back into just talking about some prospects and talking about you, Nash, because I'm a little bit curious. Like, what was your relationship like with minor league baseball before you came over to the Reno Aces? Were you someone that like kept track with it? Because I feel like the younger version of me back when I was like a young baseball fan, like 10 years old, I felt like I used to keep track on all the prospects. I knew who was coming through the system. I used to get really hype about every guy that was being called up. And then as I got older, I was like, most of these guys don't pan out. It's probably more of a waste of time to follow all these prospects when maybe one or two of your top 30 guys is really going to pan out. So what has your relationship with minor league baseball been like over the years?
Not like that when I was young. I mean, I didn't keep up with the minors when I was young. Like I would watch the Twins. I knew Byron Buxton and Miguel Sano were top prospects, but I didn't keep up with it like you did. I would say like it's the opposite. As I got older, I started to follow it more. But when I hosted the podcast in 2021, Twins were so bad. They had like a historically bad April, historically bad beginning to the season. and we became like a prospect show. So I followed the minors really closely, watch minor league games, like keep up with prospects. They traded major league players at the deadline for prospects. So I got involved then. I always knew like I'm going to call minor league baseball. So I was in tune with that. As far as the Aces, I had never heard of Reno, the city. I had no idea. Would never. I think I knew it was in Nevada, but I didn't know. I'd never heard of Reno. I don't think at all. I guess I wouldn't have known it was in Nevada even. I didn't know, but it came together. And yeah, I didn't know a ton about the D-backs system either. I mean, I've learned so much, and now I feel like I know so much about the system, like top to bottom in some ways after just a month of being here, because that's life here. And that's what we do every day. I mean, we're doing this legitimately every day. If you think of like what a baseball job looks like, what our office looks like for the Aces, it's like Aces baseball. That's what we do. Like I'm researching, I'm learning about these players. I know Amarillo, I know Hillsborough, like I know what's going on, and we do updates on the broadcast. And that's become my life now at work. So I'm like super passionate about the D-back system now. I really am. Like I think about these prospects. You get to know these guys too. Like I've gotten to meet these guys and you cheer for them. But I feel like I'm passionate about the D-back system. I really want to see them succeed in a lot of ways.
And he got there at the perfect time, right when the D-back system is kind of peaking. A lot of the top guys are being graduated, while some of the other top guys are starting to be moved to AAA. And so it's like you just got this perfect culmination of really elite talent right now in the farm system for the D-backs that will hopefully start to get groomed over the next couple of years on the major league system. So right now it's like the perfect time. If you were to go work with the D-backs minor league team, like you probably couldn't have picked a better time to go join the Reno Aces. And I just feel like minor league baseball, as I gotten older, like I said, I just feel like I probably haven't watched it as closely just because I've seen all those trades where you trade your superstar player for a couple prospects and the prospects never work out. So I feel like that's why I kind of fell off a little bit with my love with the prospects and everything like that. But as I've started doing this pod, I think I've gotten really back into it. And also, like, anytime you do a podcast about prospects, like it usually does numbers on
people love hope.
Yeah,
people love hope. That's a big thing. Yeah.
They love hope. So that's why I'm like, I'm always down to talk prospects. We always bring on the Locked On MLB prospects guy, Lindsey Crosby, because he's a prospect encyclopedia when it comes to these things. And he could just break down every prospect in your minor league system, which is just absolutely crazy that you could do that. But what do you think, now that you've been there for a little bit, what do you think about the ballpark for Reno Aces? Because I always feel like the pitching prospects, like, no matter how good they are, they always get a little bit shelled down there, while the hitters, it's probably more of like a hitter-friendly ballpark. So what is it about the Reno Aces ballpark that's like more hitter-friendly than pitcher-friendly?
It's been such a, like, Millard, this has been like the biggest topic in the booth, honestly. Really? Like, for example, Tommy Henry pitched really well last night. Like, he was spotting everything. I thought he looked great. I kept saying, like, Tommy looks awesome tonight, but he gave up 5 earned runs. So if you look at the stat line, you're like, oh, that wasn't so good for Tommy Henry last night. If you were to look, like if you had watched the game and you just looked, you wouldn't know. But there's a jet stream in right field. So if a ball is hit to right field, like Kevin and I laugh about it because we'll see a ball go up. And it was cold this week. It's cold this week. So this series with Sacramento, we haven't seen as much power at all. We're probably getting like an actual baseline of what it would look like in a normal league this week. But there's a jet stream in right. So like any left-handed hitter who pulls a ball to right field, the ball will just carries out onto the berm. And then, it's Keith Law said it's like pitching on the moon here. And I've seen that. I mean, we've had some monster offensive outputs in the first weekend. This week, as I said, it's been a little bit less, but even 8-6 today. I mean, that's feels like low scoring for the Aces. Tommy pitched great last night, gave up 5 earned runs. I thought Blake Walson looked good today. Like he struggled a little bit early, and then he found his command in the second and third inning. But even he gave up, I think, 3 earned runs today in 4 2/3. So this you can't scout the stat line with this ballpark. I love it, but it's deceiving when you look at these pitchers. But it also speaks to Brandon Pfaadt last year and how good he was and how good he's been to pitch and have. I think he had a 2.63 ERA last year with great strikeout numbers at AAA. To pitch the way that he did in this league, having a 2.63 ERA is having like a 1.20 ERA in the PCL and any other league. So it also speaks to if you have success and you have a sub-4 ERA even in the PCL, that is big. I mean, that's significant, I think, for any ace who's on the mound.
Yeah, because I get all like the post game notes and like that stuff from you and Adam, like after the games. I remember seeing it from yesterday. It was like Tommy Henry lit it up, 9 strikeouts or
Yeah.
something. But I didn't even realize he gave up the 5 earned runs just because
Yeah.
you go on like the RenoAces.com, you just sort all the stats for pitchers. You're like, oh my God, everyone's got like a
Right.
7+ ERA. You're
They
like,
do. Yeah.
like what's going down there at AAA, or what's going on with the coaching staff down there. But yeah, like you said, it's more of the elevation. I also think Reno's like very high. I think it's
Yeah.
like 2+2,000 or something when it comes to elevation as well. So it's like
Yep.
it's just crazy out there. You're it's like Coors Field basically in Reno, which is insane. So it's good for the position players, but it's not too good for the pitchers. But also, I do you think that affects like how we view these guys? Like, do you think because these pitchers have worse ERAs that we're like looking down on them a little bit, or like maybe a position player looks better than he actually is because he's playing that environment where he has like a 350 average or something like that?
Yes. I mean, Tyler Gilbert's a good example of that, right? Like better in the majors than he is in Reno. And he's been that way. And that can happen. I think for a hitter, and we can get into some guys too who have really stuck out to me, like big guys I think D-backs fans should be excited about. For a hitter, I'm looking at approach. I'm looking at like how are you taking it at bat? I'm not as concerned with you fly a ball to right field and it finds a way out. I do look at like exit velo. I'm looking at the barrels. I'm looking at all of that for these guys much more than results at times. So yes, I agree. I think it's deceiving for both. I think it's deceiving for pitchers. Tommy, he was spotting it up last night. I think it's deceiving for hitters. Might get caught in the jet stream and that really impacts your numbers, and then you might get to Arizona and it's not the same. I think it goes both ways. I think I'm looking at approach, and there are certain guys I've watched who their approach has matched their results. Sometimes it doesn't in either direction, but I think that's what I'm watching, and I'm seeing how the ball comes off their bat and defensively how they look, because there's a lot of balls in play in this league too. And that's more my focus than results, I think, for pitchers and hitters, honestly.
And we're going to get into some of those guys that you think are going to be really interesting for the Reno Aces this season that could potentially be called up and be perfect fits for the D-backs in the future. But if you want to be a GM and build a perfect roster for your team, you need to download the Pro Baseball GM app, because Pro Baseball GM is the coolest game I've played in a long time. I've always thought I could be a great Major League GM. But as it turns out, it's really not all that easy. If you've had the same thought and you fantasize about managing your own franchise, go and download Pro Baseball GM immediately. The game allows you to manage every strategic aspect of a franchise, playing through seasons and leading your franchise and fans to glory as you build a historic dynasty. In the simulation, you're responsible for hiring the right coaches and staff, scouting and drafting players, navigating your franchise through free agency, and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go and as you want and when you want to. That's why I love it. Me and the other Locked On hosts are in competition, and I'm right now kicking their butts. I got my Phoenix Pirates. We're in first place, and I think I'm taking home the prize. So Locked On Diamondbacks listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the App Store. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, no more ads for this podcast. Let's get back into it. Let's do some rapid fire questions, Nash, about the prospects for the D-backs this season. And let's see, where should we start? Let's start here. What's the big name D-backs prospect that we have to watch out for the Reno Aces?
It stuck out to me from the beginning, Blaze Alexander. I think from day one here, I love his approach. He's looked good at short. He left early today. He got hit in the helmet with a pitch. Hope he's okay. Exited early. Phillip Evans took his spot at third. But he has been tremendous over the last 5 or 6 games. I think he's somebody who takes great at-bats. When I speak to approach and the quality of at-bat, he's drawing walks. He's deep in every single count, it feels like. And then he's driving the ball with authority. And today is a good example. He took 2 sliders. It's ABS, automatic ball system, for those who don't know. It's automatic umpire, basically. He took 2 sliders that looked maybe off the plate. He's really locked in. Took 2 sliders. He was frustrated, took a timeout, battled back, and then he laced the slider to center for a hit. I think it was a full count. And that speaks to his ability and how good he's looked. So I think Blaze Alexander, everybody's talking about Jordan Lawler as the shortstop prospect. I think Blaze Alexander is just sitting there and he's looked fantastic.
He was someone that was on my radar during spring training because I'm always, I guess, probably a little bit more down on Perdomo and Nick Ahmed than I should be. But so far to start the season, they've been absolutely phenomenal. But coming into the year, I was like, Perdomo didn't have a great year last year. I don't know what Nick Ahmed is going to look like off injury. If both those guys struggle, I'm like, maybe we give this guy Blaze Alexander a chance. Who's like 21 years old and super raw and super talented. So I love that call. But you just triggered a question that I do have, Nash. I want to know how you feel about the electronic umps and the new rules in Major League Baseball, because I think pretty soon we're going to get the electronic umps on the Major League level. And I've loved the new rules so far. I'm pro pitch clock. I'm pro bigger bases or whatever. I'm pro the throwing over to first, the pickoff rule. So how do you feel about the new rules in Major League Baseball? And how do you feel about the electronic strike zone eventually coming to Major League Baseball as well?
I think the PCL without a pitch clock, Millard, would be, I feel bad for those who dealt with that. Speeds up these games. They're always high scoring games. So yes, I'm on board with that. The automatic strike zone, you don't even notice really. Like when you're watching, it's so quick. And that was a pleasant surprise. I was talking to Kevin today about that. It's a pleasant surprise. I thought there was going to be a delay because I've never called a game with the automatic umpire, but it's super quick. It's right away. You get the call. I'm in favor of it. I haven't even noticed it. So the concerns I had with it are not validated here in the first 2 weeks of action.
Like, does anyone even argue balls and strikes with the automatic?
Yeah, system? I think people are confused in the stands. Like they forget that people don't know. But the players, I think, sometimes get frustrated. They'll be like, "Ooh," but it's just like you would see otherwise, right? It's just, they get frustrated with a human umpire as well, and so it goes both ways. I think it works, and I think I have been pleasantly surprised by the speed at which it works.
Okay, I'm so pro electronic strike zone just because I've heard how much is taken off the time of the game in the minor leagues, and we're already minus 30 minutes in the major leagues with the new rules. I can only imagine once we add that electronic strike zone, you take away the delay, you take all the arguments that you could have had away. Maybe that takes off like another 10 minutes. Like eventually, our baseball games going to be like 2-hour exhibitions. Like it's honestly going to blow my mind how quickly these games are going to fly by once we add some more new rules. But which player is like a dark horse guy? Who's sneaky that's maybe not as talked about some of the other guys? Maybe not a top 10 guy, but someone that's sneaky good that you think has a great chance of being called up someday.
Couple of names for you. Jorge Barrosa made his AAA debut yesterday, and I'm gung-ho on him. I'm all in on him. Center fielder. He started in center last night, and Fletch started in right. I'm super excited about Barrosa, I think, on this team. Switch hitter. You know the D-back system, so many left-handed hitters and in the corners in the outfield. To have Barrosa, who can bat from both sides, he hit 9th last night. Such a luxury for Blake Lally in that lineup, and I think D-backs fans should keep an eye on him. And then on the pitching side, I was going to say Slade Ciccone. Slade Ciccone started the other day. I think he started 2 days ago. Just death on righties through his minor league career now. Can get mid-90s with a fastball. He was touching 95. Good, sharp slider. Still got to refine to get lefties out. But I think at the very least, Slade Ciccone could be like 96, 97 out of the bullpen, spotting him up against right-handed hitters. I love his stuff. Looked great the other night, the Miami product. And I think Slade Ciccone's a guy you got to keep an eye on as well, just stuff-wise. And then in the bullpen, Justin Martinez, it has not been an easy go. It has not been an easy go. If you look at the box score, I think he walked 3 or 4 last night, but his stuff is premium. Premium stuff, fastball at 100. We saw like 101, I think, on opening day. The slider was great. He pitched today again. Slider's fantastic. He's getting squeezed a little bit by that ABS, and it's impacted his last couple outings. But if he ever like puts it together for an at-bat when he does, it is the most electric at bat you're going to see from a reliever. And I love his like moxie. Like I'm Justin Martinez. Like he gets it. Like he's just cool. I love him. Love watching him pitch. And I think he's a guy you got to keep an eye on.
And he was someone that I think had a pretty good spring training with the D-backs. And he was on my short list of if guys in the bullpen go down, maybe he's someone that could be one of the first names called up for the major league season if, there was some injuries in the bullpen. So he is someone that I have been keeping my eye on in the minor leagues. But someone that, is going to get probably the most talked about acclaim among D-backs prospects this season outside of like a Jordan Lawler is Brandon Pfaadt, who is I used to say his name is Fat. It's Pfaadt, I'm pretty sure, right? Pfaadt?
Fine. Yeah.
Okay, I used to think it was Fat until someone told me. I was like, okay, I guess I've been saying it wrong this whole time. How do you think he's looked so far? And do you think because I do think he could get a cup of coffee with the D-backs this season, because last year I think he could get like the Corbin Carroll treatment where maybe he gets called up post All-Star break. Maybe it's like an August, September call up or whatever. But I do think this is someone that could be major league ready this season, could have a cup of coffee with the D-backs this season. But how do you think he's looked so far in your time with Reno?
I don't think there's any question about that, Millard, at all. I think absolutely he could pitch for the D-backs this year. The most impressive thing about him to me so far is he gave up, I think, 4 homers in his first start, and that was at home to the Aviators. The most impressive, that's not the most impressive thing. The most impressive thing is what comes next. He gives up homers, and I read this about him coming into the season. I hadn't seen him pitch. He gives up homers. He just continues to attack. Like, he trusts his stuff. He trusts his fastball. He's fastball heavy. He's going to pound the zone. Fastball's up and into lefties. He has cutting action. And then the difference for him is going to be, how does the slider come along? Can he add velo to the slider? Can he add more break, horizontal break to the slider? Because if he just does that a little bit with how good his fastball plays, he's going to be, I think, at least a mid-rotation starter in the big leagues. I think I've been impressed what we've seen, even though that first start was rough. He was great in Tacoma. I love how he pounds the zone. He attacks, and I completely agree with you. He's also lauded as like a quick learner, and I think that is going to help him because he does need to refine his secondaries a little bit more. His fastball is outstanding.
Yeah, and after the season he had last year, I mean, everyone is just tantalized by his talent and just anticipating when he's going to get called up, because he had 200 strikeouts for the first time since like Matt Moore in like 2011. Yep.
It was most in a minor league season in 20 years. He's going to pitch tomorrow, and it is a marquee matchup. Kyle Harrison is one of the best pitching prospects in baseball in the Giants org. He's going to start tomorrow, and it's going to be Brandon Pfaadt, Kyle Harrison. We're super excited for that.
So just a general take, what's your outlook for the Reno Aces this season? I know they started a little bit slow, but again, if your pitchers are going to give up home runs because of the stadium they play in, it's going to be hard to win games someday. So what's your outlook for the Reno Aces this year?
Yeah, so they have some bets you're going to see in Arizona this year. Pavin Smith already is back up, but Diego Castillo, Emmanuel Rivera, Phillip Evans, they have plenty of guys who are major league players, which is very helpful. That's going to help them. We don't know how long they're going to be here, but they're very good players. And then they're younger guys too offensively. Blaze, Dominic Canzone has 3 extra base hits in the last 2 days. The ball explodes off his bat. So he's another one I would mention as like a sleeper candidate, left-handed hitter. There's so many of them in that system. I think the mix of them offensively is enough to score a lot of runs, and we've seen it at times, just not consistently. Dominic Fletcher as well, trying to get him going at the top of the order. That would help a ton for this lineup. And then the pitching staff, you have Pfaadt. Tommy Henry was over 100 innings with an ERA at 3.74, I think it was last year. You have Ciccone, who I really like. You have Tyler Gilbert, who's a major league pitcher. Peter Solomon is up now with the D-backs, but he was here. There's plenty there. Blake Walston is, I think, 21. He started today. He's already up at AAA for good reason. So there's a lot there. The bullpen's been a problem. Throwing strikes has been a problem for the bullpen, but the stuff is exceptional back there.
Yeah.
And I think now Carlos Vargas is in Reno as well. It just adds to that dynamic group. I think the Aces are going to be good. They won the PCL last year. Ton of talent. Just got to throw strikes, got to attack, and I think they'll get back on track. It's been a slow start to the season.
Yeah, Blake Walston's probably the next like rotation potential piece that I'm going to be looking at, keeping my eye on for the rest of the Reno Aces this season. But Nash, our first of many crossovers that we're going to do this season. We were talking before the podcast. I messed up. I forgot to make the graphic with your socials and everything. So please plug where the people can find you online.
Yeah, you can follow me at Nash Walker 9 on Twitter, but you got to follow Millard first. Make sure you're following Millard, like the YouTube. Yeah, I'll be here. So I'm going to give you updates. And if you ever have questions too, like shoot them at Millard. I don't know, Millard. I'm not going to speak for you if you don't want people in your DMs, but shoot them at Millard. Any prospect questions you might have of Aces, even Zob Poodles too. Like I'm in this org now, and Millard's covering it too. So, I mean, I'm excited. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, send all your prospect questions this way. We're going to be doing
let's do it. I mean, we'll chop it up, and I want Millard's opinion too on these guys. Like I want you to be able to give that back, and I think it'll be a great great little thing we do.
Well, Nash, thank you for hopping on this podcast today, and we're definitely going to be doing more crossovers in the future. Have a good day, sir.